Hey guys, what's going on? Today we're going to be going over my top 10 backlog games from 2020. That means these are games that did not release in 2020, so we got a pretty good wide range of games here, some from 2019 all the way back to some retro games. Remember, this is my personal preference as opposed to games that I like to play, so I like certain genres better than most, and that will definitely factor into this list. I will also be doing a top 10 2020 games that were released this year that I'll probably put out in a couple weeks, maybe last week of this year or maybe first week of 2021. But let's go ahead and get started. We'll start at number 10 with No More Heroes. Now, while I played the new released version on the Nintendo Switch that dropped this year, the game was not a remake or a remaster by any means. I own this on the Wii, which is where this was originally released, but was holding out for a release on the Nintendo Port console, and my patience paid off. While this game had aged, it is still a boatload of fun nonetheless. You play through the game as Travis Touchdown, who is a young male assassin who has a thing for attractive women, anime, martial arts, and did I say attractive women already? Regardless, he is being manipulated by Sylvia Christel, an agent of the United Assassins Association, to move up from being the 11th ranked assassin to become the top ranked assassin. Travis does this by wielding his beam katana and taking down the assassins one by one. You'll need money to enter each fight, upgrade Travis's beam katana, or upgrade his attributes. You'll do this by traveling around the city of Santa Destroy on your motorcycle and completing various side missions or minigames. The minigames are creative and silly. However, they make for an interesting change of pace from slicing heads off with your beam katana. No More Heroes is an extremely fun game that doesn't take itself seriously. The humor may not be for everyone, but I loved it and plan on playing the second one in 2021 and the third one when it comes out as well. Moving on to number 9, I have Star Wars Battlefront 2 on the PS4. And this went from being a highly anticipated game to complete and total train wreck to a game that EA continued to improve until it became quite enjoyable. I put this on the list because I finally played through and completed the campaign this year and thoroughly enjoyed it. The story ties into the Star Wars universe very well. The gameplay and missions are fun and enjoyable. However, it's a very short campaign and does leave more to be desired. The reason Star Wars Battlefront 2 is on this list is because of the total package. From the campaign to the multiplayer game modes, and there are a lot of them. Supremacy and Galactic Attack are just these large-scale battles with so much going on. And then the mixture and combination of all the different characters that you can play as, from Stormtroopers and droids all the way up to Jedis and Sith Lords, is just ridiculous. Playing all these game modes with friends or family is a blast. Then there is the Heroes vs. Villains mode, where you face off with an assortment of lightsaber-wielding, force-enabled characters in a team-based battle. However, the mode that caught me off guard the most was the Starfighter Assault. I actually only planned on playing this mode to achieve the trophies needed for a Platinum Trophy. However, I quickly became addicted. The large variety of ships from X-Wings to TIE Fighters and TIE Bombers, all the way up to the hero ships including the Millennium Falcon, was just a blast. Sure, there are bugs in Battlefront 2, and not a perfect game by any means. However, the variety and total amount of content here makes it for an enjoyable experience. Now on to the first real retro game on the list, the original Streets of Rage on the Sega Genesis. While Streets of Rage 2 is a game that I've beaten well over 20 times, and one in which I would easily place on my top 5 or maybe even my top 3 games of all time, I've previously only dabbled with the original game, so I finally dedicated some time to complete a 1cc run on it, and boy was it worth it. This game was really ahead of its time. The music was composed by legendary artist Yuzo Koshiro, and is absolutely fantastic. The enemy and stage design was well ahead of its time, and this was probably the best arcade port that we had seen from a beat-em-up at the time. In more recent games in the series, I had always been favored Axel or Blaze, but Adam in the first game was a boss. And speaking about bosses, we were introduced to some great boss fights, many of which return later on in the series, including Mr. X. Now, while the gameplay is not quite as good as its sequel, it is still solid and set the foundation for the franchise. I also completed the 1cc runs on the Sega Master System port, which was not released in North America, as well as the Game Gear port, which is one of the better games on the Game Gear. However, if you are a fan of the series or the genre and haven't played the original, then take my advice and give it a try. Moving on to number 7 on the list, we have The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening on the Nintendo Switch. I was actually pretty psyched for this game when it got announced. I mean, the art style reminded me of the claymation design of the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer movie that I grew up watching every Christmas. I picked this game up on launch day in 2019, and I have no idea what happened. I believe I started it, got distracted, and then backlogged it. So I dedicated some time to finish this game this year, and boy, I'm glad I did. I never played the original on the Game Boy, and that is not required to enjoy this game, I can tell you that much. I grew up on the original Legend of Zelda on the NES, so the top-down style of Link's Awakening was a pure joy to play through. The gameplay was dated a bit, with the inventory system being a bit clunky and the backtracking in the dungeons. However, that's because this is a remake of a game that was designed to fit on a Game Boy cartridge. I really enjoyed the mini-games and trade sequences that were required. The world and the characters in it just gave me such a good feeling, and I could have kept playing this game for much longer. The dungeons were a lot of fun, even with the backtracking, and I found the bosses enjoyable, however maybe a bit too easy. I give Nintendo a hard time often referring to the Switch as the Nintendo port console, and charging $60 often for ports of older games. However, for The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, I have zero problems with the $60 price tag. Even if this game is only 10 or 12 hours long, this is a full remake, and it's obvious that a lot of care and love went into the making of this game. I would fully support them doing this with another 8-bit or 16-bit Zelda game, and truly wish they would. At number 6, I have Valfaris on the Nintendo Switch, which was another game that released in 2019, and I believe was the first game that I played in 2020. This is a 2D retro-style, sci-fi themed run-and-gun, hack-and-slash masterpiece with a great heavy metal soundtrack to boot. In Valfaris, you traverse through multiple stages that all have their own unique design as well as enemies. You'll acquire different ranged weapons as well as melee weapons along the way, which you can upgrade or switch between. The melee combat is a little more in-depth than your ordinary hack-and-slash, as you can take advantage of a parry system. If you're a fan of 8 or 16-bit Contra titles, then you'll have to give this a try. The only negative that I can say is that Valfaris is a little bit short. The game consists of only 10 stages, each of which has the main boss and some of which have a sub-boss. I found all the boss fights very enjoyable, and would have loved to have seen even more. There were also collectibles scattered throughout the stages that can help you upgrade your weapons faster. You will die a lot throughout the game, however, you have unlimited lives and just get sent back to your most recent checkpoint. The checkpoints are also spread out at reasonable distances from one another. I did a full review on the channel and you can check that out if you want. In short, I highly recommend Valfaris and think it's definitely worth your time. Moving up in the top 5, I have The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. It's actually quite amazing that it took me until 2020 to complete this classic. Seeing how I've completed the original Legend of Zelda 20 plus times, and I've also completed The Adventures of Link multiple times as well. I did get a Super Nintendo when I was a kid, but it was several years after I got my Genesis, and for some reason, I completely passed this game up. About 10 years ago, I played about halfway through this on the WiiWare, but got sidetracked. It was only recently that I did play through the original game on the analog Super NT, which was an amazing experience. Being that I have no nostalgia for this game, I can say that it's a game that holds up great today. I mean, I don't think that this game even needs a remake. It's just a top-down Zelda game at its best. The 16-bit pixelated graphics are gorgeous, the world of Hyrule has so much character, and the dungeons and bosses are just simply amazing. I'm sure that most of you have already played A Link to the Past, but if you haven't, then do yourself a favor and knock this one off your backlog. Alright, up to number 4 with Doom 2016 on the PS4. and what is probably the biggest surprise on this list. This may not be a surprise to most, but it was surely a surprise to me because first-person shooters are far from my favorite genre. I initially wanted to play Doom Eternal to rank it on my 2020 top 10 list, but being that it was a direct sequel to Doom 2016, I figured why the heck not just knock it out first. And boy oh boy, I really enjoyed the game. I mean, Doom Guy is just plain and simply an overpowered beast. And playing through this game with such fluid and flawless controls was so much fun. Ripping demons apart with your bare hands and then acquiring badass weapon after badass weapon was so satisfying. And then when you mix in collectibles, and I was hooked on my way towards my platinum trophy. The graphics can be a tad muddy at times, but that has a lot to do with the world you're in. Being that this is an early PS4 game, I'm curious now to see what improvements they've made in Doom Eternal, which I will play very soon. So if you are like me and don't play many first-person shooter games, then make an exception here and make this one of the few that you prioritize. Alright, the top 3 starts off with The Last of Us Remastered on the PS4. This is another scenario where I really wanted to play The Last of Us Part 2, however I obviously knew that this being a heavily story-based series that I needed to knock this game out first. The Last of Us is a game and series that hits you with a gut punch right out the gate. I've never played a game that did such an effective job of character development, and it builds up to an epic explosion in an infamous range house scene, which may be one of the most powerful scenes I've seen in any game or movie, and it gives me goosebumps every time that I watch it. If you want to play a game where the writing and acting can rival that of any great movie, and someone watching you play the game can enjoy it almost as much as you playing it, The Last of Us is the game for you. So other than the story, you also have very solid gameplay. You'll navigate your way through multiple different settings on the travels across the United States, in a world where everything has been taken over by a virus and the infected. You have to deal with a combination of different infected enemies, which are humans that have been infected by the virus and act similar to that of zombies or demons. You also have to handle human enemies that are obstacles, and going back between infected and human enemies makes the gameplay loop seem a bit more fresh. Along the way you have scarce resources, so you have to pick and choose when you want to go stealth and when you want to go full steam ahead and just blast your way through conflicts. Scavenging for resources and collectibles is a large part of the game, and can at times get a bit redundant. The gunplay and melee combat is satisfying, however it's far from the smoothest and does leave room for improvement. I'm not a huge fan of stealth gameplay, and that delayed my entry into the game. I do feel that it is a game that every gamer should experience at least once, and like I stated before, you can play more aggressive at times, so it's not a 100% stealth experience.
It's bizarre.
Get up. We're leaving.
And if I say no?
Do you even realize what your life means? Huh? Running off like that, putting yourself at risk? It's pretty goddamn stupid.
Well, I guess we're both disappointed with each other then.
Alright, at number 2 I have Thunder Force 3 on the Sega Genesis, which is probably a surprise the most. However, if you watch my channel and you hear me gloat about shooters all the time, then it shouldn't be a big surprise. Now, for a long time I've preferred vertical scrolling shooters, and Thunder Force 3 was a game that recently made me appreciate horizontal scrolling shooters just as much. Now, the biggest question is, how in the world do I put a 30-year-old 16-foot shooter over a game like The Last of Us, that some people consider the best game of all time? Well, that is pretty easy. I love shooters, and Thunder Force 3 is nearly a flawless game. I mean, I can point out several imperfections with a game like The Last of Us. However, there are a few, if any, that I can pick out from Thunder Force 3. This is a gorgeous game that with fluid and excellent gameplay that really lacks the flaws and irritating features that drag many shooters down of its time. For instance, when you die, you don't go back to a checkpoint. And also, there are no speed power-ups, so dying late in the game doesn't mean that you need to automatically hit the reset button. The different combination of weapons you acquire along with the diverse collection of stages make the gameplay fresh and enjoyable. The soundtrack is absolutely amazing and will be for sure stuck in your head. The lone issue is that the boss fights, while good, are not really epic. That is what holds this game back just a little bit. While I know shooters aren't everyone's cup of tea, however it is mine, and Thunder Force 3 is a great one. Alright, now to my number one non-2020 game on my 2020 list. I have Super Mario Galaxy, and while I played this on the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection, this is just a port and not a remake or remaster. So I'm putting it on this list and not on the list of games released in 2020. So I'm more of a traditional 2D Mario style fan. However, this is by far my favorite 3D Mario game I've ever beaten. And just may be my favorite Mario game ever. And that's saying something. Now, full disclosure, I have not beaten anywhere near to every Mario game. I've played most of the Super Mario Galaxy 2, but I haven't actually finished it. However, I have beaten Super Mario Odyssey, and I prefer Galaxy over Odyssey every day of the week and twice on Sundays. So Super Mario Galaxy is what gaming is all about. Pure, plain, and simple fun. The controls are top-notch, and the variation of different galaxies and planets within those galaxies is just a total joy to experience. How they factor the gravity mechanics into the platforming is magical and makes each experience a different challenge. And the introduction of Rosalina into the Mario world was an excellent addition, and leads to a bit more story in a Mario game than most. The music and overall soundtrack gives you that special feeling that Nintendo is notorious for. If you haven't played Super Mario Galaxy, then it's a must-play, and I think it fits in just fine with current generation Nintendo Switch games. So whether you experience this on the Switch or play the original version on the Wii, do yourself a favor and give it a try. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And like I said, I'm currently working on my top 10 games I completed that were released in 2020, and that should be out in a few weeks. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.
Woohoo!